Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Coding to Think. With me today, I've got Harold Campbell. Harold is an Agile Coach and Lead. He has got a vast amount of experience in the software development industry. He's worked as a consultant for different companies across the world, and he's founded a few startups of his own. He holds a master's degree in management in entrepreneurship and new venture creation. Harold, how's it going?
Fantastic. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So I thought we could talk about you today and your journey of being an agile coach. So tell us a bit about that. What is for somebody that's hearing the term for the first time, agile coach? I'm sure some people would have had it. What is an agile coach, and what's the role that an agile coach plays?
So, as it pertains to my journey, I had a kind of circuitous path to becoming an agile journey. Years ago, I used to be a software engineer, and I used to do the typical kind of front-end work, server work, back in the day when we were moving from ASP to ASP.NET. And I was able to do quite a bit of work building projects for financial institutions. And at some point, we were failing dismally. And as is normally the case when we're not delivering, who do we blame? We blame the team. So to try to get things done better and faster, we adopted XP. And that was in like the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, 5 or thereabout. And at some point we got better at delivering. We started adopting some of the things like test-driven development, having unit tests. In fact, we started doing like a hybrid, so we were doing stand-ups and stuff. And I hated it at the time, right? But I did like the ability to be more predictable that we got from XP.
Yeah.
Then from there, I was like, I hate this corporate stuff. I'm going to start my own company. Because I'm good. And I failed like dismally because I didn't have enough understanding of business.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while. And then I came to South Africa. I did my master's at WITS. And then I started doing research and working in the industry. Then I met the wonderful folks at ThoughtWorks. And in working with them and adding on to my managerial skills that I was doing and some of the engineering practices and working with clients, I kind of grew into the role of an agile coach.
Yeah.
And that's where I got more experiences working with larger teams, more modern delivery practices, things like continuous integration, DevOps, all of those wonderful things. And that's kind of what led me into this world of being an agile coach. So I went from being an unofficial technical coach early on as a manager, and then more of a more formal technical coach, using being more deliberate in how I worked. And being in South Africa, being thrown into several other teams, it was baptism by fire. I didn't have a choice. You either survived or you did not.
Yeah.
And given that we were working with constraints, like the project, we had, I think, like 22 teams at one point, and we were only probably 3 or 4 coaches. We didn't have a choice, so we had to experiment and learn fast and adapt. And this kind of just made it like this really intense learning environment.
Yeah.
So that was my journey into becoming an agile coach, with a specific slant in being like a technical agile coach. Now, from my perspective, like I think the other question you asked was like, what's an agile coach? What's this agile thing that we talk about?
Yeah.
It's a super good question. From my perspective, at the simplest form, an agile coach helps companies to be better at delivering products or services that they can monetize. Right? We go in, we work with the teams or individuals or people at different levels, and we help them to improve how the teams work together. We help them to get better, improve their processes so that they can build and deliver better products and services, just so that those companies can remain relevant.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, if you strip away the Agile manifesto and its values and its principles and all of these other 40 other delivery practices that they have, at the core of it is that we're trying to improve how people deliver, how the teams work together, how they have a mechanism to continuously improve. And that's it.
I can imagine that having worked with different teams, there's certain things that you've picked up that make teams perform better. What are some of the traits that you've picked up in teams that make them perform well?
Are you asking like high performing team? What do you normally see with a team that's high performing team?
Yes, because for there to be fast delivery and to deliver value in the world of today where everything is so fast paced, you obviously need to have solid teams that are able to perform. And from your observation, what are some of the traits that teams that perform well have?
So for the first thing, and this is a really good question. So as an agile coach, I can't make a team high performing. What I can do is I can enable a team to become high performing. And it's a very subtle difference. So once we've gotten that cleared out of the way, the things that I normally see and try to advocate is that the teams need to be small.
Yeah.
And we're talking around roughly anywhere between 4 to 5. It should be small enough so that the teams can deliver things by themselves without a lot of dependency on external teams. So first and foremost, we try to advocate for small teams, but beyond the size of the team, the composition of the team is also super important. So we need to have a team that is cross-skilled and that we have all the roles necessary in the team, so that they can actually build a product or service. Whatever they need to get the thing out to the customers, they can do it by themselves within that team. And that should be the ideal. That's what we should be working towards. Now, in most larger companies, this is difficult because we will have dependencies on other teams. And as a coach, what we try to do is try to identify and either reduce or remove those constraints or those dependencies. So the team needs to be small, the team needs to be cross-skilled. The other thing that we need to look for is, mechanisms to ensure that there's team safety, or there's safety, a high level of what they call psychological safety in the team. Without psychological safety, where people can actually share their perspective, they can challenge, they feel comfortable speaking up. None of the other things matter, right? Like, this is a foundation requirement for having a high performing team, where we need to have high levels of team safety. And those are just like 3 of the main structures that we need within the team. The other thing is, like, how do they work? So from my perspective, high performing teams tend to be pushing things out to production, or they tend to have short feedback or short release cycles. Out of feedback loop. And the reason for this is that if we're building something, we need to be able to get feedback from the customers sooner rather than later. So instead of having a 1 year or 18-month delivery cycle or release cycle, high performing teams tend to have like shorter cycles, whether 2 weeks to a month or something to that effect, just so that they can go, are we on the right track with this product? Can we get feedback from the customer? They also have they also focus a lot on their inspect and adapt cycle, or what we call their sermon is to improve. So we can look at it from the perspective of inspecting and adapting the product. So are we building the right product? But at the same time, are we working in an effective manner? So if you're coming from Scrum or one of those other things, we'll talk about retrospectives or whatever, the team simply needs to have a mechanism where we can say, let's stop, put our tools down, and look at how we're working together. And then once you have these things in place, the team can improve its own processes regardless of which delivery practice you're using. I don't care if it's Scrum, Kanban, Safe, Less, DAD, Crystal, or don't care, right?
Yeah.
What we need is a mechanism for the team to actually inspect and adapt. But a team by itself isn't an island, unless you're a startup. We also need an environment in which the team operates, and that environment needs to be supportive. So we need to have environments that, and we're talking about organizational environments that support collaboration, that support experimentation. We don't penalize people when they're trying to run an experiment and we don't get a practical experiment that you're trying to deliver. We have a culture of transparency. So these are some of the things that I expect or I tend to see in teams that are high performing. So there's the culture, there's the practices that they have, and then there's a team structure.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention the different practices like Scrum and I've often had people mistake the practices for being agile or mistaking certain aspects of that come with being agile as being agile, right? What are some of the misconceptions that you've come across, and how can you best define being agile?
Honestly, this is a good question, because this is something that even now we still grapple with, and I've seen this on multiple clients. So first and foremost, let's use Scrum because it's one of the more popular frameworks.
Yeah.
So Scrum, I will see people talk about Agile and what they're talking about is Scrum, right?
Yeah.
So one way to think about it, we have this umbrella. We call this Agile umbrella. And under this umbrella are a whole bunch of different frameworks. And they're just that. They're just mechanisms that are taking a different way or different slang to help teams to become agile. So you can look at agile from two different perspectives. There's your doing, that's the thing that we do on a day-to-day basis, the practices.
Yeah.
And then we have the other things like the being, and these are the things that enable agility. So we have to be able to separate those two, and things like Scrum, XP, DAD, I've forgotten, there are a whole bunch of them. Most of these things are just the practices that you will see in a particular team or a group of teams. And those are great for helping the team. But remember when I was talking about the culture and the environment, to ensure that we have agility, we still need a shift in mindset. And I think that's the major thing, like the major hurdle that prevents most teams or organizations from truly becoming agile. So we can do agile, but that's great, and it doesn't allow you to have long-term sustainable development without having an environment that's rich, and the environment is trying to become agile. The environment and the organization itself is focusing on being agile. And to do that, we normally have to change the culture and the mindset. So for me, like, there is agile the practices, and then there's agile the mindset.
Makes sense, and it actually leads me to my next question, which is more around I know that you've also mentioned that you've tried starting your own ventures, and you've also studied entrepreneurship. How have you seen that play out in the role that you play now as an Agile coach? And can you even draw parallels in the entrepreneurship world with the space that you're in now?
I can draw some parallels. So from an entrepreneurship perspective, we talk about things like, persevere or die, or pivot or persevere.
Yeah.
Where we have to make decisions around, do I want to continue on this path, or do I want to shift and try something else?
Yeah.
And, as an entrepreneur, you're always trying to figure out, how do I continue to remain relevant to the customer? And regardless of the size of the company, companies all go through this. It's just that some companies don't know that they're dying because they've been here for so long.
Yeah.
And if they don't find new ways to improve their product offering or change and evolve their product offering, they will die. And that's a fact.
Yeah.
So as an agile coach, I am always trying to walk that balance to encourage or guide the leadership team to explain to them that, look, regardless of how old we are or how mature we think we are, the market changes, and we always have to find ways to probe the market to evaluate, is this the best thing for us?
Mm.
As like I work predominantly with large organizations and also with government in one instance. It's
Yeah.
difficult for these gigantic organizations to shift, right?
Yeah.
And as a startup, sometimes you have to break off, do a spike, try something, and go, this looks like it's going to work. Should I fund this? And then should I see where I can take this, and then maybe divert or change course to try and catch up with this? So I do think that there's value in having in being an entrepreneur, or having an entrepreneurial mindset and taking that into the business.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Can I tell you a story?
yeah,
Can I
yeah,
tell you
tell
a
me the
quick
story.
story?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So, there was an evaluation I did once, within an organization, and I was rated poorly on following rules. And I pointed out to the person that, a part of my job is to actually challenge these rules. So the
Yeah.
reason why you're seeing such a poor rating is because I'm actually doing my job. So this is like a traditional organization
Yeah.
where, they have very rigid, you must not challenge, you must do this, you must walk in this line, you must quack. And I'm like, but do we need to quack, or should we shut up? You know, and you're 100% right. We do need the entrepreneurial mindset that will challenge the internal ways, or even just existing long running ways of doing things. Otherwise, we're gonna stagnate and die.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. The experience you've had with people, because people are always gonna be people. There's some people that are very resistant to change. How do you approach people in spaces where they like things the way they are, and try to introduce novel ideas that are good for the organization in the long run? How do you how do you go into space and introduce ideas like that?
This is a good question, and I like it. One of the things about agile is that we recognize that we're dealing with people,
Yeah.
and first and foremost, they're the humans. So you'll find most coaches, they don't refer to people as resources, because we recognize that we're dealing with individuals and people, right?
Yeah.
Like people and interactions over processes and tools. And the reason and the way that I tend to approach things is I try to connect with the humans. So I recognize that people who've been doing their work forever, and they're going to be disrupted. You have to have empathy for these people, and you have to connect with the humans.
Yeah.
So for me, in teams that we're trying to change, when we're creating new teams, we do focus quite a lot on the individuals. So things like team bonding, team engagement, ensuring that everybody understands where they fit in, give people mechanisms for actually sharing or giving feedback. And these are some of those practices that help to improve the psychological safety in the team. So once we've created an environment where people can be people, and people can share feedback, they can voice their concerns respectfully and safely, and we can do this transparently. At the end of the day, there's still going to be just some people that aren't interested to actually walk this journey, and it's going to be like a very small minority.
Yeah.
And typically for those persons, if you've tried everything, you've tried to find new teams for them, you've upskilled them, you've given them new tools, you've put them in different teams, you've done everything, then you have a responsibility to help those persons to find a better place to work, right? And this is not saying, oh, I'm going to fire you, right? It's literally saying, look, do you really want to be here anymore? And in so doing, I can, whether in one of our subsidiaries or in another team that's not doing agile, or somewhere else in the organization, or even somewhere else in the network, and we help those persons. personally, I don't normally have those. It normally doesn't get that far for me.
Yeah.
And just by having the one-on-one conversations with a person, the personal mentorship or coaching or having regular feedback sessions, I
Yeah.
normally don't get to that point. But again, it's empathy, connection, and people, right? Because
Yeah.
people,
Let's talk about the other things, the side projects, right? Because the last time we chatted, you and I, you you were working on this interesting project. I think it was about chatting data.
So data visualization, I still feel that data visualization is too hard
Yeah.
for business people and for like small businesses.
Yeah.
Even like going to an SME and saying, "Hey, do you want to do a pivot table? Let me show you how to do a pivot table." Like, pivot what? So there's a small project I have called groundtap.com,
Yeah.
and it's looking at, how can we actually help small companies, SMEs, who won't necessarily have your typical data scientists on staff, just to make sense of their data. So it's still in development. Hopefully it will be out soon.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to do a 9 to 5 and the day job.
Yeah.
So that's something that's on the side, groundtap.com, and it's, I work on it when I can.
Yeah. On a personal note, I've definitely seen how having such personal projects, side projects, benefits my work as well. Because you sometimes have employers that don't like it when people do side projects, but there's a positive side to that, because the things that you learn from side projects, you end up being able to take some of that into your workplace, and yeah, that's something that I've just observed from me personally. Is that something that you also picked up when you're working with projects?
100%, right? Because like this side project, and again, it goes back to giving back to the community also. I actually started it from a conference talk I did years ago when I was in South Africa. I did a conference talk and I'm like, this actually has value. And in continuing to develop that, I've learned so much more about data visualization, and I can now take some of my technical knowledge from this, how we look at data, how we visualize data, how we communicate about data at different levels. I can use that knowledge back at work, just to make it simpler for the executives to understand what are we looking at when we talk about this team is late or this team is struggling. Here's what the data is saying. And even with the actual data scientists, data analysts, I can have much richer conversations because I can speak their language. The additional thing is that it allows you to learn, and it provides a broader surface area of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because if you just stick into this little silo, you become a specialist, and then you start to atrophy or die. At least that's my belief. So if you're learning broadly, and as an agile coach, I work with software teams predominantly. I need to be able to understand what's new in the technology, what are the new methods and practices from a software perspective.
Yeah.
My side projects help me to do that. So for instance, beyond GroundTap, I recently did another project called Glow Salem on GitHub, where you can mock data, because getting mock data is hard. So I was like, gee, could I actually do this quickly so I don't have to type all of this crap in my testing?
Yeah.
And when I couldn't do it in a way that I wanted, I built it and then I open sourced it. So when I'm at work talking about, you should be able to mock your data, I'm like, here's how you would do it. Here's how I've done it.
Yeah.
How do you do it? So you can have those richer conversations and connect again with the people, because Agile is about the people who need to develop the work to the customers to make money so the company can survive.
That's very interesting, because I've often found that some people, when they make a transition to either being an Agile coach or a transition to a part of the software development team roles that don't require coding, they never really get to tinker around But yeah, there's definitely benefits to continuing.
I don't think that every agile coach has to be an engineer. You
Mm,
have other agile coaches that are coming from a product or a process perspective or from a design perspective. But
yeah,
for me, it's important that whatever you're doing, it's not just you're not just going vertical, right? You
yeah,
need to have that breadth of you, like we call it a T-shaped person.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. One last question to wrap up things. So with the way that, I mean, the past year, a lot has changed in people's lives with COVID uh, all across the world, and work has changed as well, as we've seen more and more jobs become remote. Um, are there any predictions that you can make in the tech world that you think might be coming about, um, either because of the recent changes or either the trends that you seen develop um,
Yeah.
within the tech industry?
I think that there are going to be two major shifts.
Mm.
Um, for one, traditional companies are going to have to adopt or realize that, people work for them as a choice. So in the past, it was, I am the employer and you don't have a choice. You have to do what I say. You have to come into the office. And
Mm.
people are going to go, actually, no. Because with remote work, more people are, you have a larger regional connection. So I'm presently in Mauritius. I could stay in Mauritius and work in South Africa,
Yeah,
and if I were in Jamaica, I could stay in Jamaica and work in the US or in Canada. If
yeah,
I were in Britain, I could stay in Britain and work in Sweden or Ireland or wherever. So, you know, companies are going to have to start treating their employees as treat their employees with more care
yeah.
and not just resources, because people now have choice and it's easier for people to actually work anywhere that they want. That's the
Mm.
first thing. The second shift beyond the people is that the tools are going to change. So tools for pairing and remote work are going to improve. So whether you hate Teams or you hate Zoom, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
This is not going to be a way of life. And I expect to see more like tighter coupling between our kind of video conferencing tools and your software delivery tools. So at some point, I expect to see, I use Visual Studio Code. In Visual Studio Code, I expect to see a little widget. So as I'm typing, I can talk to you,
mm.
and it'll be easier for us to pair. I expect it to be easier for us to do things like deploy to a shared environment. I still have to spend time setting up Git and ensuring that you have it set up to, all of those things, continuous delivery, your DevOps as a practice is just going to get better, because remote is going to be the future. We have no way, no alternative, or a very limited alternative, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely agree to that prediction. But yeah, Harold, it's it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. One more thing, if, for your work and other projects that you're working on, and for anyone that would like to follow you, you and your work, how can they find you?
Cool. It's Harold Campbell at Twitter,
Mhm.
one word, and I'm also on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Harold Campbell, and you'll find me. And
Cool,
GroundTap is groundtap.com. And thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
cool, awesome, thanks, man. Cheers.